Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. Today is Monday, September 18th. How the hell are you guys? You have a great weekend? What'd you do? Sit around, watch a little football? Did you get out of the house? Did you go to Costco or something and fucking load your hut up with shit you didn't need? All right, you got to watch out for those weekends, man. You'll just sit around bored. Next thing you know, you're in a store buying shit you don't need. It's insane. Anyway, I had a great weekend. I took a little trip out to the desert and performed and hosted a show with my man Steve Agee for an incredible cause, a benefit for Brian O'Connor, a.k.a. BOC. And it was a magic night. And I want to just say, everybody, if you're into some Eagles of Death Metal, Queens of the Stone Age, Masters of Reality, all that desert stuff, you're going to want to go to this website and support Brian immediately. Help him out, man, and it would be greatly appreciated. Go to gofundme.com/BOCS-medical-fund. Brian was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer in 2010, and he's been battling it ever since. And of course, medical is just insane. It is absolutely insane what it costs. So if you can help out, it'd be great. We were out there in the desert Saturday night, raised some money, and had an incredible magic night under the stars in a little place called Pioneer Town where I have never been, and I will be going back. It's funny because over all those years that I worshiped Caius and Josh and Queens of the Stone Age and Mojave Lords and Chris Goss and Eagles of Death Metal, all those years I loved all that sound. You know, I never really went out to Joshua Tree, or of course I've been out that area a million times, like Coachella and riding my motorcycle to Arizona and stuff, but never took the trek out to Joshua Tree, and I'm glad I did it for this cause, and mostly I'm glad I did it with Steve Agee because he had been out there many, many times, and he was an amazing tour guide for this weekend. And we almost got killed, which just reminds me every day, as corny as it sounds, fucking get out of your house and go live your life. Because I tell you, you never know what's going to happen. We were coming down the freeway, we were coming home from the benefit concert on Sunday. We're on the highway. We're doing about 70, and out of nowhere, here comes a fucking guy in like a Toyota station wagon, full on 70 miles an hour towards us on the wrong side of the fucking highway. And, you know, I'm just sitting there chilling like a zombie. We rocked out all night, so I'm pretty trashed, and Steve's trashed. And the two cars in front of us, thank God somebody wasn't just texting or not looking or whatever. We would all been dead. But instantly, Steve whipped to the right, and thank God there was no one in the slow lane. We would have crashed them off the road. Just panicked, whipped to the right, and this fucking car came by us head on and just flew right by us. And fuck that guy. I had so many questions. Was he trying to kill himself? Was he texting and just, oops, I'm on the wrong side of the highway? Was he, I don't know what the fuck was going on. But wow, right then you just sit there and go like, oh man, gotta live your life, man. Anyway, great weekend out there in the desert. It was very spiritual and magical, and I will be going back out there. I want to go camping at Joshua Tree as soon as I can, immediately. I'm just going to take 2 days off, which is super crazy rare, and go out there and maybe do some psychedelics and just fucking enjoy the ride, man. What else is happening here? Great great guest today. I recorded this show a few weeks ago in New York City. I sat down with my good friend Brian Slagel. I've had him on before. We talked about the history of Metal Blade Records, and it was an epic episode. This guy knows everything about metal, and he is the owner of Metal Blade Records, and he has a brand new book out right now, which I strongly suggest you get, called For the Sake of Heaviness, 35 Years of Metal Blade Records. The guy is always a great, great guest, and the conversations could go for hours. We covered some amazing stuff today. We talk about the first time he saw Metallica, which was their second gig ever, opening for Saxon at the Whiskey A Go-Go, back when Hetfield was just a front man, no guitar, which is just so crazy to think. We also talk about my favorite VHS tape called The Ultimate Revenge. You can see it on YouTube with Slayer, Venom, and Exodus. And we talk all about that era, which was April 3rd, 1985. You want to see some of the best metal on VHS tape, which is... it's not on VHS tape now. I mean, it is if you go on eBay. But what I'm saying, if you want to see like a little incredible snapshot of metal, check that out. We talk about that. We also get way into where we think everything's going with CDs, vinyl, and remastering and all that kind of good stuff. And we do get into some good old-fashioned New York City talk. I love it. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. Enjoy that conversation in a few minutes here. Before I do get into that, what else is happening? I want to give a shout out to some donators to the Patreon page, man. A few of you guys are kicking ass out there. Thank you. It is Dean Del Rey on Patreon, so it's patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. Daniel Taylor, thank you so much. Jim Airy, thank you so much. Both you guys donating to the podcast. Very cool. Like I said, you know, I do the show for free. 300 and some, almost 80 episodes. And any donation helps. And also, I was reading heavily into it. I've said this a few times, but if you do subscribe to the podcast, if everybody subscribed today, right now, if you hit pause and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, this podcast would be number one. Can you imagine that? 1 second, you just hit subscribe, and all of a sudden we were number one. If everybody did it right now, press pause and subscribe. What else we got going? I'm going to get into the episode right now. I know my sponsors. Fuck yes. Thank you so much, El Cajon Harley. 1 year and counting. Incredible sponsor for Let There Be Talk right here. El Cajon Harley is the finest Harley-Davidson dealer in America in my eyes. And I would not buy a motorcycle anywhere else. Go to elcajonharley.com and look at the selection. Incredible selection of used bikes. They've got all the new bikes. The 2018s just came out and they are on the floor right now. They also have an incredible service department. Awesome motor clothes. Maybe you need a new helmet. Get one of those badass new Simpson helmets, full-blown outlaw look going down the highway. You got to get yourself a motorcycle. What are you doing? Man, as I was out at Joshua Tree, I was so bummed I wasn't on my motorcycle. I was like, oh, this place screams motorcycle ride. Get a motorcycle. Go on their website, and you can check out the financing right there. You can apply for financing right on their website. It's super easy, and believe me, it's easy to get financed with Harley-Davidson. I did it, so anybody can do it. elcajonharley.com, your one-stop motorcycle shop. Also, the official Rolex dealer, St. Cross, is on board. St. Cross, you know I love watches. You always hear me talking about Rolex. I absolutely worship them. Check it out. St. Cross Jewelers, Los Angeles, California. 928 Southwestern Avenue over there in Koreatown. They are an official Rolex dealer. Don't get your Rolex in a gray market. That's stupid. You want to get the full warranty. You want peace of mind. You don't want to be sitting there going, is this a fake? Is this a fake on my wrist? There's nothing worse than not knowing if your watch is real. Buy it from an official Rolex dealer, St. Cross. They are in Los Angeles, California. Give them a call. Ask for Andy, 213-738-0808. Ask for my boy, Andy. I love all you guys. I appreciate the support. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm out on the road. I'll be in Chicago September 28th through the 30th with the 30th is going to be with Josh Wolf. Zany's Rosemont, 28, 29, 30. Get tickets right away, Chicago. Don't sleep. I'm finally coming. I can't tell you how many people go, when you coming to Chicago? Those shows should be sold out just from the emails I got. Then I'm off to New York City, October 1st through the 10th. I will be in New York City 10 nights, rocking at the Stand. That's right, I will be at the Stand 10 nights, New York City, October 1st through the 10th. Also going to be seeing Bruce Springsteen on Broadway, so you'll be hearing all about that on my October 9th episode. I love all you guys. Let's get into the episode here. Keep the candles lit. For anything else, go to DeanDelRey.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Here he is, Brian Slagel. All right, here we are, another episode of Let There Be Talk. It is the return of the Metal King himself, Brian Slagel. How are you, dude?
I am good, thank you.
You out promoting the book?
I am promoting the book like a madman lately.
35 years of metal for you.
Yes, indeed.
Metal business, but not metal fan, right?
Yeah, no, I've been a metal fan for, well, let me think. How long now?
I'm 51. What are you?
So I'm 56. So it'd be, I was 11, so 45 years.
Yeah, 45 years. Yeah, I guess I was like 11. Also, you know, what's the record that gets you going on it?
Deep Purple Machine Head.
There it is.
Cousin of mine played it for me. I was like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, right.
I was immediately hooked.
Yeah, me, of course, it was, I had the Partridge Family, I Think I Love You. And then I had Bye Bye Miss American Pie, Don McLean, the 45 with the thumb on it. And then my mom brought home Rock and Roll All Over, you know, Kiss.
Yep.
And it was over with. They had the sticker, the big one. I stuck it on my bedroom. And
nice.
That was it, man. A lot of people call Kiss the gateway drug to rock and roll, and I absolutely believe it, you know.
I was a huge Kiss fan when I was a kid. That was my first concert, 1976, Kiss.
Oh, wow. Love Gun?
No, it was
Destroyer. What is it?
It was the Alive tour, so it was in between Alive before
yeah.
Destroyer came out.
Wow, where'd you see that? L.A.
The Forum, yeah. They recorded the 4 shows at the Forum because I remember being there at all 4 of those shows, and then the record came out. I'm like, wait a minute, they didn't even play 4 of these songs that are part of the live part of that live. Right. So that was all studio nonsense.
They played Cow Palace the night Elvis died.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I think that bootleg is called. The King Is Gone or something.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but, you know, Kiss is... There's nothing like it when you're a kid, man.
Well, I mean, you know, what they were doing in 1970, you know, the 70s, I mean, they were like... The music was heavy for then.
Yeah.
And just the makeup stuff and the fire. I mean, nobody's doing stuff like that. It was crazy.
Not at all, man.
Like, people look at it now and like, oh, it's cartoon. Yeah, that was definitely... People thought they were evil and crazy and over the top back then. So.
Yeah. We spent, of course, you've been on the show before, so if anybody wants to hear all about Brian's history with Metal Blade, go listen to this episode. It's pretty epic. We did it a couple of years ago, and it was just amazing to see, you know, the history of metal through your label, especially with Slayer. You know, I'm such a Slayer guy, you know.
Craziness.
So that's amazing. But you and I spent some time with Eddie Trunk last week, about 5 hours talking.
Yes, sir.
And there were some stories that I wanted to hear that I was thinking about. One of them was you brought the guys down to see Cliff Burton in Trauma at the Troubadour.
Yeah, so on the Metal Massacre 2 record, I put a band on there called Trauma who had sent me a really good quality tape from San Francisco, and their managers called me up and said, hey, they're going to come down and play, because they had some guys that had some money, so they put them down to L.A. to play a couple shows. So I went when they first played the Troubadour, And I thought the band was okay, but the bass player was incredible. I was like, that guy is, and he didn't fit in with what the rest of the band was doing. It's like he's on an island of himself, and just, you know, the whole crazy hair and blue.
They had crazy hair?
Oh, well, he had the big crazy red hair, and he had the bell bottoms and the whole. I mean, he looked just like he didn't.
He had that look in Trauma also?
Absolutely.
Wow.
So a little while after that, Lars said, hey, you know, we're looking to get a new bass player because we like the bass player we got, but, you know, we're getting better musically and we want somebody a little bit better. Do you know anybody? I said, sure. I said, you know, there's this band Trauma that from San Francisco that came down here and played a while ago, and their bass player is incredible. They're coming down again in a couple weeks. You guys should come. So sure enough, show happens again at the Troubadour in L.A., and both James and Lars were there. And Lars, I don't know how, 15 minutes into the set or something, was like, that guy's going to be our bass player. I'm like,
wow.
Sure, Lars. And sure enough, he was.
Well, I always think about that conversation because at that time, Metallica is really not even a band. I mean, yeah, they got a song on your Metal Massacre, but they're not really like something that you'd go, well, I'm going to leave this band for this band. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they were starting to kind of, you know, get something rolling. And look, Lars was, if nothing else, persistent about stuff. And I mean, he made a lot of things happen. I mean, the second gig Metallica ever played, and at that point, nobody knew who they were. And they did that. Actually, Hetfield didn't even play guitar at that gig, but they offered a Saxon at the Whiskey in LA, which is like, I kept asking Lars, like, how did you get this gig?
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, nobody knew who they were.
Story.
Yeah, it was crazy. So he had a penchant for making things happen, and the thing with Cliff was, I think he just battered and beat him up, and it was like, come on, and then finally Cliff was like, all right, fine, I'll do it, but you got to move to San Francisco. And at that point, Metallica had been to San Francisco a few times and had a way better reaction up there than they had in LA. So like, sure, we're there.
Yeah, that's wild to think too, you know, because like, here they're moving to San Francisco, a completely strange city for a guy they don't even know. He could have gotten the band and then been like, this is terrible, and we just moved here, you know?
That is very... Well, they had nothing to lose at that time. I mean, those guys didn't have any money. They didn't really have a whole lot going on in L.A., and they certainly weren't... You know, they were gigging around L.A. at the time, but people in L.A., the club promoters, thought they were a punk band, or they're too heavy, so they just didn't fit anywhere. And they definitely had played gigs in San Francisco where they totally fit into the scene up there. So I think it made sense, even if the thing with Cliff didn't work out. I think they're like, hey, we'd rather be in San Francisco anyway because we have fans there and we like it there. So why not?
What did you see Metallica with Hetfield just as a frontman?
Yeah, the first show I missed the very first show they played. They played in Anaheim at Radio City or something. I didn't go to that, but the second show was that Metallica show. And yeah, Hetfield was just singing.
With Saxon, you mean?
Yep. With Saxon at the Whiskey, and Hetfield was just singing. Not playing guitar. And I think they did maybe one more gig after that with him doing that, and then he put on the guitar, and they had the dueling guitars. That's
crazy to think about if he would have just been a front man. I mean, that just, you can't even fathom, because he is the right hand, the best right hand in the biz. Everybody thinks of him as the ultimate player, you know?
Well, the funny thing is, too, I mean, he was insanely shy back then, really shy. In fact, Mustaine was doing all the talking at all those early gigs. Like, Hetfield didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird that he, you know, obviously played guitar and wrote all the songs and everything. So it was kind of weird that he did that. I'm not sure I can't remember what the reasoning was, but it wasn't long until he's like, give me the guitar, so I at least hide behind the guitar while I'm doing this.
Yeah, like a fucking piece of armor. You know what I mean? Instead of just standing there, because that's an era where the front man was David Lee Roth and those kind of guys, Vince Neil and stuff, where they're just like big front men, or Robert Plant, let's even say before that. So for Hetfield to be up there like, all right, you guys ready? That would be so
yeah. Well,
so
he didn't do
weird.
any of that.
No.
But I mean, he only sang because they didn't have a singer. And when they did the demo, it's like, well, you know, Lars played the drums and James did everything else. So he de facto became the singer. And the famous story is, you know, they were the only band that they kind of jived with in LA was Armored Saint. They played a lot of gigs with them and hung out with them. And, you know, they were always on John Bush, like, hey, come on, join our band, join our band. And he was like, no, I'm going to stay with my buddies. So
that's amazing, man, when you think about just the history of Metallica, you know.
I mean, it still is crazy to me when you sit and think about it for 2 seconds about, you know, I mean, Lars and I had a moment at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they got inducted at, like, you know, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning, when it just ended up being us two kind of talking for a couple minutes. And Like he looked at me and go, how the hell did this whole thing happen? It's
Really,
so crazy.
I think that all the time too. When I was at that 30-year anniversary and I was just looking at those guys up there, I was like, I still can't believe it, man. These guys have fucking completely won. You know,
it's so bizarre. I mean, just, even because, we were friends before anything, just it's two, 16, 18-year-old kids way back in the day. Who would have ever thought that both of us would have long careers in the music industry? It's pretty mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah, man. It really is. And everything that happens, losing Cliff and carrying on and becoming and having one of the biggest records of all time, the Black Album. It just fucking floors me, man. And I always say, in the States, the day I saw the guard change was when they did the Scorpions Day on the Green with Yngwie and Y&T and all that. When they came on, it was like, oh, it's changed. Absolutely that day.
Yeah, and I think, for me, it was a little bit... when was that after or
That's
before
Lightning.
the Aussie tour?
That
was Lightning,
It's Lightning.
Yeah, because they did a similar festival in LA where they were amazing as well, but
Right.
didn't really register to me that this was something real until they did the Aussie tour. They opened for Ozzy, and they
Right,
were
on the
consistently destroying Ozzy every single night. We're like, wow, this is something really big now.
Yeah, man. That was an epic tour, man. It's funny because they're about to put out the massive box set of Masters,
Yep.
And fuck, man, when you look at just the magic of that record, you just can't even believe it. The lyrics, the album cover, the sounds of it and everything. And then they go out on a giant Aussie tour and you're just like, wow, it's over.
Yeah, pretty much. That was when you're like, all right, that's when I was like, okay, this is officially the changing the guard here. This band is going to be massive after that tour. Yeah, I mean, the record was so good. Just, it's really bizarre how, and they were, they did it without radio play, without MTV play, without soul. I mean, they just did it as being a super heavy band at that point. It was still kind of weird. That's like, wow, this band's really super heavy, and they're becoming the biggest band in the world.
Yeah, you being a label guy, and I always try to describe this to people, but I played music all my life, and A&R guys come, not because you're a metal label, so not it's different for you, but just an A&R guy, to see Metallica, you'd be like, oh, absolutely not, because you wouldn't. Yep. You just would not get it in that landscape back then, of that music landscape. You'd be like, these guys are scary. Yep. Their songs are long, and I don't get this at all. It didn't even sound like Judas Priest when you listen to Priest now. And I remember somebody recently got a lot of heat where they said Priest isn't metal. I think it was Kerry King or somebody, and he was like, they're rock and roll.
Definitely not Kerry King. Kerry King loves Judas Priest. He would never say that, but somebody said like.
I'm not saying he doesn't like. What I'm saying, somebody said I consider Priest rock and roll. Compared to the landscape now.
Yeah, but see, that really bothers me. In fact, so I was for a while on the Grammy committee that they instituted after the whole Metallica debacle. Right. And at one point, I was there arguing with these other people on the committee about Iron Maiden. They wanted to put Iron Maiden in the hard rock category and not the metal category. I was like, Iron Maiden is the embodiment of heavy metal. Right. Like if it not for them, all these other bands that we're talking about wouldn't even exist. You can't put them there. Like, where are we drawing the line now? It's like you have to have heavy vocals to be heavy metal.
Right,
That makes no sense
whatsoever. You're making a good point there.
And the same thing with Judas Priest. It's like, just because the needles moved, Judas Priest was, and always will be a metal band. Right. Just because the music... Like I said, the music needles move to heavier stuff doesn't discount them from still being a metal band. That drives me nuts because people are like, oh, it's not heavy enough now. Yeah. Like, they're more like a rock and roll band. It's like, no, they're not. They're a heavy metal band. And again, if Priest wasn't waving the flag in the 1970s for heavy metal, who knows if we'd be talking now either. Yeah, it's true. It is funny because, that's a great point, because when you listen to Priest now, I'm more saying more of a song format. It's more traditional. Sure. It's kind of verse, chorus, like, let's say Living After Midnight, you know what I mean? Compared to once Metallica comes, you're like, what the hell? Like, it's especially like the Justice records, complete prog metal, And same with Maiden, too. These long 7/8 Rime of the Ancient Mariner, all these songs are so long and crazy. From an A&R standpoint, it would be bizarre to be like, I don't see it here at all. Well, I don't think A&R people over the years have really understood metal generally anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, they, part of the reason why it kind of died off in the late 80s was there were so many people involved at major labels that didn't know anything about it. They were signing horrible bands and putting millions of dollars behind these terrible bands, and it just kind of became a parody of itself. And then grunge, rightfully so, wiped it off the face of the earth, basically.
My point is, as a label owner and obviously an A&R guy for your label or whatever, what would you look at back then as far as how to sign a band? You know what I mean? Like, just you loved them or you didn't.
Yep. I mean, to this day, there's no rhyme or reason. There's no formula. There's nothing. It's like, if I hear it, I like it, I want to work with them. If I don't get it, then I'm not going to work with them. It's really as simple as that. There's no other formula. I mean, I think, you do take into account these days, it would be nice if there was something happening with a band, like if they had some sort of social media thing, or they're playing in a local area and getting something happening there. But then
YouTube looks, all that.
I mean, stuff like that helps, but I would never sign a band because of that. And there's a lot of bands that have a lot of that stuff going on with them, but they're just not, in my opinion, that good, so we won't work with them. And then, again, we'll sign a band, like we signed this band that I absolutely totally love called Visigoth from Salt Lake City. They're traditional old school metal, sounds a lot like heavy Judas Priest.
Yeah.
And they lived in Salt Lake. They had nothing. They had nothing going on, zero, no social media, hardly any live shows, no nothing. But they had this amazing demo tape, and I'm like, let's do it. I don't care. They're so good. We should do it. And then we had to kind of try to build it out from there.
Well, that's a full blown win. To not be like social media, you're just doing it because you love to do metal. You know what I mean?
Young kids doing it for exactly that. They just love metal.
It seems to me like, metal to me now seems like it is back when you and I first started listening to it. Just like the cool people are listening to it. You know what I mean? That's how it was when we started. I always tell people, like, when they say metal's dead, well, it got massive for a minute. Yeah, but before that, it was just three guys at the locker. Hey, dude, check out this Def Leppard High and Dry record. Yeah, and the other guy's like, no, I got Saxon, Denim and Leather, It would be like me and three buddies. It wasn't the whole school. We were actual freaks.
Yeah, totally. And then, it's kind of, we've actually been talking about this a lot lately, is the metal's definitely not in the mainstream any longer, which, it's all the pop and hip hop stuff, which is fine.
Yep.
But the underground is still as strong as ever. And I mean, look, the biggest touring acts out there, Metallica, Maiden, they're all headlining stadiums and arenas, and there's Slayer. I mean, there's a bunch of bands out there. Like, if you look at the touring market, it's completely mainstream. It's like more tickets than pretty much any other genre at this point. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, it's not. But I do think the pendulum eventually will swing back. I mean, it's very similar to where it was in the late 90s. Obviously, it's not. In the late 90s, people thought it was dead at that point.
Yeah.
It's certainly not that way. It's super strong in the underground, and it's a form of music that a lot of people listen to, but definitely not in the mainstream. But hopefully the pendulum swings back. Hopefully the younger brothers and sisters of these kids that are into the pop and the hip hop stuff go like, I don't want to listen to what they listen to. I want something I like. And the natural thing is, let's go to something a lot heavier and on the other end of the spectrum. And hopefully, like I said, that pendulum will swing back. And you kind of see these changes happen a lot every time there's a new decade. Yep. You look at the late 70s and the 80s with the whole disco scene, and then the early 80s brought us, Maiden and New Wave of Progressive Metal and the Metallica and Slayer and everything else. Then in the early 90s, metal kind of got ridiculous, and you had the grunge bands came in and swept all that sort of stuff out. Then the 2000s, when the metalcore bands kind of came up and propped up the whole metal scene, and metal kind of exploded from there. So it'll be interesting to see if we see some sort of it feels like if there was going to be a shift now would be a good time.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, Gojira is fucking unbelievable to me. I just kind of like, and that just came to me out of nowhere, like 6 months ago, somebody goes, dude, are you listening to this band? I go, no, I haven't heard it. And I put it on, I go, holy shit, this band is fucking amazing. And also shades of metal of like Mastodon.
Yep.
And a lot of that stoner stuff like Elder and all them witches, that kind of, desert metal kind of vibe.
Desert metal, I like it.
Yeah, like, well, people call it desert rock, and I'm like, this sounds a lot more like metal to me. It's like Caius. Caius was metal.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and those are the bands. It's funny, like, we talk about, just people now getting to Gojira and Mastodon. Those bands have been around for like 10, 15 years.
I
and
know.
just now people are like, oh, yeah. And that's kind of the way it's been, is it takes so long. It's really difficult to break a new band these days, especially in the heavier genre. The only band that's really broken fairly quickly would probably be Ghost.
Yeah.
And you've got, but you've got Amon Amarth and you've got, I'm trying to think, Amon Amarth, Lamb of God, Mastodon, Gojira, all those bands kind of coming up the ladder now. And they've all been around for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So
and they're
people
more
just now
metal
getting
than
into
Ghost, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Sound-wise.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think that there's, those bands are moving up, and there's some interesting kind of underground scenes that are happening now. I'll be curious to see which, if any of them kind of take a hold. So we'll see. I think we're in a good spot now, and hopefully things will, like I said, the pendulum will start swinging back.
Is there any spots, say, such as San Fran in the 80s was all the great thrash bands, or Seattle with all the grunge bands? Is there anywhere out there now where you're like, oh my God, this is like full-on scene going on?
Not really. It's weird now, but I think because of the internet and because it's such a global community that you don't see that. And we were talking about this the other day. It's like, LA, San Francisco, New York, like all these big cities now don't have scenes anymore, partially because the pay-to-play kind of ruined everything for a lot of these areas where it's just impossible to make that stuff happen. I guess if there's a region at this point that's churning out a lot, probably more bands than anywhere else, it might be Sweden.
Well, yeah,
there's
of
a
course.
lot of stuff coming out of Sweden, but I mean, it's really coming from everywhere now. I mean, you don't really know. For a while there was like a kind of Northeast Massachusetts vibe happening with a lot of stuff, but now I don't know. There's not really there's a lot of different subgenre scenes, but bands come from almost anywhere. There's not a specific spot anymore.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the other side of it too, it's so hard to keep a fucking nightclub open,
Exactly.
I mean, like I was just at this club last week up the street, and I was like, this place is great. I already forgot the name of it, where I saw Greta Van Fleet.
Yep.
And I was like, man, what a great venue. And the guy was like, I'd be surprised if it's around next year the way rent is,
Yeah, it's getting, New York City, which is, I love, and there's a lot of great venues here, but they're kind of drying up fast. I mean, Irving Plaza, not Irving Plaza.
The Ritz?
The Ritz, just went away. And that, people are saying, well, they're going to redesign it and re-put it back out. But then I was hearing stuff like, nah, that's pretty much Webster Hall. It's
Webster
pretty
Hall.
much.
Is it done?
Yeah, I think so. They're going to gut it. And they're not sure what they're going to do with it. There was some semblance that they were going to try to redo a music venue in there, but now I'm hearing that they're not sure what they're going to do with it. And a lot of people said this is pretty much the end now, and it's toast. So that you lose that, so that's a bummer. And they've still got Irving Plaza and Gramercy and a few other really good venues here. So hopefully that stuff keeps happening, because it would. We've kind of had that happen in L.A., like losing the House of Blues and not anything coming in to replace it,
and then the Key
has
Club.
really hurt that scene. Yeah, I mean everything. So you've got the Whiskey and the Roxy, but people are worried about that because of the whole, they're redoing that whole area in Hollywood.
Freaks me out all the time. I mean, I work every night of my life at the Comedy Store.
Yeah,
and
that's right in the crosshairs,
right across the street, and
stuff on.
That's why I started coming to New York, because I was like, yeah, the Comedy Store is having the biggest resurgence of its life. I mean, every fucking room is sold out, 3 shows a night. It's unbelievable, superstars. But how many times can you say no until it's 400 million?
Exactly. I mean, that's what happened to the House of Blues. Live Nation was like, no, we're not going to sell it. No, we're not going to sell it. No, we're not going to sell it. Somebody finally made them the offer that they couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
And that area, and obviously, like you said, right across the street from House of Blues is where the Comedy Store is. And it may be, if you look at where things are going now, it's going to be all massive high-rises and skyscrapers and stuff. And then the little Comedy Store there. So like you said, how much longer before somebody's going to pay them stupid money? And then that goes.
And even if they built another one, like some people said, well, what if they built a hotel and then put the Comedy Store in the lobby? It doesn't, first of all, that's 2-3 years. By then, the shift has changed, know?
And the problem with that is that these developers will come in and they're going to put stuff in that's going to make them a lot of money.
Right.
Which is why there's no music venue in the one where House of Blues was, because that doesn't generate enough income for what they want to do. And they're spending, hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and the same with the comedy club. They're not going to put a comedy club in there. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, as long as, Mitzi's still there running it, so I don't think she'll ever sell it. But at some point when she passed away, I wonder... We all wonder what's going to happen at that point.
That's why I started putting down some roots here, you know, and also,
Smart man.
yeah, and also you recently we were talking, and it seems more and more people recently. You're 56. I'm 51. At some point, you're like, oh well, I can't drive anymore in this traffic. It's just fucking
4 hours a day.
It's unbelievable now. And look at this week; it's like 109 degrees out. So I was riding a motorcycle my entire 16 years there. Then when I got ran over, all of a sudden I'm like, I go, well, I'll get in the car. And I never realized how bad LA was. To me, I'm just splitting lanes, getting to gigs. And, and then all of a sudden I go, oh, this place sucks. You know what I mean? In the last year, I'm like, this place fucking sucks.
But it's gotten really, I mean, I've lived there my entire life, and I never thought I'd ever leave. But now the traffic is so horrible there. Yeah. It's the worst it's ever been. In fact, we were named the #1 most congested city in the world now, over Moscow. And I've been to Moscow a few times, and once it took me 6 hours to go from the airport to the downtown area of Moscow, which is 35 miles.
Fuck.
LA is now worse than that.
That's insane. And that's, I even think about Paris, how rotten that is, you know? You know, LA, the worst. And then they're trying to charge almost some New York prices now. They're just raising up the rents. Yeah. So all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm just going to live in New York where I can walk around and shit.
Well, I hate to say this, but, you know, using Waze or, you know, whatever GPS systems around LA, it'd take you on all these back roads and stuff. And I didn't really realize, but LA is just one gigantic shithole with little pockets of little nice areas.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like, it's gotten so horrible there now. Yeah. It's a mess. And they've not done anything to do anything with the infrastructure, just the way the city's run. They've just ruined that whole city. Like I said, I used to love it there, and now it's just like I'm hardly ever there, and I don't care.
Yeah. You and I were talking about an infamous VHS Studio 54.
Yeah.
With Slayer.
Slayer, Exodus, and Venom.
Yep, and you were talking about trying to put it out, but nobody wants to put it back out. But that really was probably one of the most iconic visions of that scene ever. I mean, you know.
And that tape, you know, kind of has become legendary because the show was so great, and you know those bands all kind of, well, especially Slayer and Exodus, obviously kind of.
And it was done at the place where the famous disco, Studio 54, the old cocaine '70s era.
But yeah, I guess the deal with that though is because you know we a lot of people have tried really hard to get it. I mean, there's a variety of issues, but the one main issue is none of the bands really want it out there. None of the bands feel that they had a really good show that night, and they didn't, you know, that you can't go in and re-edit it or redo anything. It's like, but I'm like, it's so iconic. Like, well, just let us do it.
It really is.
I mean, maybe at some point down the road. I mean, the problem is now just everywhere. I mean, it's all bootlegs, and you can go watch it on YouTube and stuff, but nobody's getting paid for that. I don't think so.
Yeah, but to get a really good, and also I always wondered if you might know this question, there has to be more to each band's set list, right?
Here's the other issue with it is nobody knows where the master tapes are.
Oh, fuck.
Nobody's really exactly sure of who exactly owns the rights. I mean, technically the bands would own the rights to their performances, but a lot of that stuff's gone. But yeah, the tapes and everything are gone. There's a lot of stuff like that. We were back, and when people were doing reissues and stuff back in the early '90s, we were doing a lot of these reissue stuff. We did, you know, Alice Cooper and Deep Purple and
UFO.
We didn't do any UFO, but we did Thin Lizzy. We did Stars. We did a lot of stuff, and we talked to the Angel camp because their stuff wasn't out at that point. Excuse me. So, you know, eventually the labels were like, well, I guess if somebody else wants to put it out, we should put it out. But they told me that there's an entire pro footage shot show from like whenever they did that live album in like 76, 77, but nobody knew where the tapes were, who owned the rights. It was just gone.
Wow.
And we were talking to everybody, and like nobody knew where they were, and we actually kind of mounted a bit of a search party for it, and nobody could find it.
Wow.
It's gone. So it's probably filmed by some company that long ago went bankrupt, stuck it in their archives, and probably just got sold somewhere, and so somebody taped over it, or who knows.
I mean, that pretty much, that Studio 54, I mean, that is the Bailoff, you know, blueprint where you get to really see them. Growing up in that scene, I really think that, of course, Metallica being my all-time favorite, but really, to me, when you listen to Bonded by Blood, it's so fucking dark for the time, man.
That's amazing. That record is phenomenal.
It really is, right?
Phenomenal.
I just can't believe the stuff that was coming out of there. You know, Death Angel, Exodus, Metallica, Testament, of course, when they're Legacy, all that stuff.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in San Francisco because, there's a scene going on in LA, but obviously you had all those bands playing in San Francisco, and, Slayer and obviously Metallica moved up there. A lot of bands from LA, the heavier bands, would go up there and play. And those shows like the Ruthie's Inn, Stone, Waldorf, all those places were just amazing. That whole scene up there at that time was phenomenal. We were actually going to do the first Exodus, right? We were going to do Bonded by Blood.
Wow, really?
A really good friend of mine who lived in New York, who used to let me stay at his house when I first started coming here to New York, wanted to start a label. He's kind of, hey, you have a label? I want to start a label. Like, yeah, sure. So he got some guy that had some cash to do it. And he had kind of gotten in touch with Exodus, and we were kind of not really battling over it, but we were kind of both talking about it. And he said, hey, do you mind if we do this? It'd be my first big thing, and yada, yada. I'm like, go ahead, man. It's all good. So,
wow.
So that was Torrid Records. Yeah, Todd Gordon. Talk about that in the book.
Wow. Yeah, man. Torrid Records?
Torrid Records.
Was it on Combat later?
Yeah, I mean, they had a deal with Combat, so they kind of had both logos, I think, on there. Combat might have given them some money to do it, and then eventually the rights went over to Combat.
What a band, man. He's
so amazing.
So, man, I mean, Gary Holt, when you think about, when you look at these, like most people don't understand, but the sound of thrash metal is all in the right hand of the guitar player and then the drums. And Gary Holt and Hetfield have this way of playing that it sounds like a gallop. It's like, but it's really fast. And if you ever tried to do it, you'd be like, how the fuck do these guys do this, And it's just mind-boggling because that is the sound of thrash metal.
Yeah, totally. And those are the two guys that really, they're kind of the purveyors, I think, of that sound and that style. I mean, the two biggest bands there. So, and it's great seeing Gary and Slayer. That's,
Well, that's the obvious fit right there.
Yeah. And I mean, Carrie and him are good friends, and he's such a great guy, an amazing player. I mean, obviously it sucks losing Jeff, but if there's going to be a replacement, Gary kind of seamlessly fits right in, and he's such an amazing player.
Somebody hit me a couple of days ago, said, what was the heaviest show you ever saw? And my first reaction I put up was Metallica opening for Ozzy, That was the first kind of reaction. But then really when I sat back and thought about it, it was definitely Merciful Fate at the Kabuki.
Oh, yeah.
On the Don't Break the Oath tour.
Yep.
And also Slayer on South of Heaven at the Stone. Those two eras, me being pretty radical of a dude, was still kind of like a little scared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was weird to see Merciful Fate on that, and they're playing, Dangerous Meeting, and I'm like, hey, this is some satanic shit here. You know what I mean? I mean, the other, like when you see another band do satanic stuff, you're like, But to see King Diamond at that era, and these guys, they were from fucking somewhere else, And
that stuff was super heavy. I mean, that early Merciful Fate stuff is so heavy. I don't think the record's really, like the original demo tape, which is out on some of their stuff, is so heavy. And live, they were just crushingly heavy. The only thing that made it a little less heavy was, for some reason, Hank Sherman, the guitar player at that point, was wearing weird, he's like wearing all white, and I think he had like weird leg warmers on. I was like, I don't know what he was
I don't
doing.
remember that. I remember just because Hank Sherman is so great.
Amazing player. But he was wearing something weird. At least he was in L.A.
I remember the exact minute I learned about Merciful Fate. I walk into the record vault on Polk Street.
Legendary place.
Yeah, absolutely legendary. And I'm there with my mom because we were coming home from a Giants game. And I go, we got to stop here because that's where I'd get my medal. And they had got that Nuns Have No Fun.
Yeah.
That record's up in the black and white. There's this nun like up on the
topless
cross.
nun.
And it's like C-U-N-T. And my mom's just in there and I'm thinking like, well, I got a pretty cool mom. I mean, look at what's playing right now. And those dudes are like, you got to get this record. It's great. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
She allowed you to buy that?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
I got anything. You know what I mean? Like, I think my mom was just more like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but whatever. But
yeah, my mom was cool about it. I don't think she really knew a lot of the stuff that I had.
Yeah.
But she was like, you're all right, so I'll let you indulge in all this stuff. So
Did you do a lot of work with Record Vault back then in the day? Because you got to get these records in the places that specialized in metal.
Yeah, every city had their metal store, and I mean the Record Vault's one of the biggest ones in the country, and they were amazing. Yeah, we did tons of stuff with them up there.
Yeah,
great place.
That was like fucking Lars's hangout. I mean, pretty much. You being early on in the label, what were some of the greatest record stores? Because records are so hot again now, vinyl. What were some of the great epic metal stores that I never really probably saw? Because there's a couple right now I see on Instagram around America that are killing it.
There's a few. There was I can't remember the name of some. There was a Hastings, which actually turned out to be a chain, started in Texas, and they started bringing in. When they started, I think it was just one store in Dallas, and they were bringing in tons of metal. There's actually a huge store in Tampa, which I can't really believe I'm going to forget the name of. It's a legendary store. It's one of the biggest stores in the whole country. Like, they were doing so much metal there. Obviously, Record Vault in San Francisco. We didn't really have a whole lot in LA other than, when I worked at the store at Oz, we were obviously doing about a bunch of stuff there. And then when that store closed, it was kind of the chains took over, the Moby Discs and Licorice Pizzas of the world. We didn't really have anything there. A couple of great stores up here in New York that still exist, the Record Vault, Record Exchange, and I can't believe I know my buddy's going to kill me because he owns it. I'm going to forget the name of the other store. But anyway, there's still a couple that existed. There was one up in Rochester that was really great.
Oh, wow.
That area was
up there where Metallica recorded.
Yeah, exactly. And that store is pretty legendary. But there were so many. I mean, almost every city had their own store. But those were the ones I remember would do really big numbers and do amazing, in stores and stuff.
You find it weird. I don't know where your political, where you stand politically, but I find it strange that a lot of the metal guys are full-blown Republicans. Where do you sit on that?
Well, that's weird. First of all, I'll tell you that whenever there's been a Republican president, metal's been huge.
Right.
Just go back
Same
in time.
with comedy. Reagan.
Just go back in time and line it up, and it's all when metal's been big. I think it's weird. I don't know. I think they go back and forth. I mean, I have a lot of friends that definitely are not Republican that are in metal bands. I think it, strangely and sadly enough, depends on your wallet.
Right.
I think the larger wallet you have, the more you tend to start thinking Republican.
Yeah.
So I think I morphed the other way. I was Republican when I was a kid because my parents were, and that kind of morphed into Democrat. I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle now. I hate politics. It's such a
me too.
Such a
but
mess.
It's interesting, right? When you think of guys that were full blown, like let's just take Ted Nugent for instance, because we all know. I don't know if I need to out other guys because that's the other thing. But the Ted, we all know where the fuck he lies, and a lot of people don't even listen to Ted anymore because of it. Ted, up until probably Scream Dreams, was one of the most radical performers I've ever seen in my life.
I saw him play all the time in the 70s. He was amazing. All those records are phenomenal. And I mean, I went to see him. He opened for somebody that I saw not too recently, and he was great. But there was like a 10-minute diatribe about all this political stuff. I'm like, really?
But
I came to see music. I don't want to hear anybody ramble
back
on.
Though, like. At Nuge, when I'm seeing him at Dan the Green, sold out 70,000. To think back, you wonder is he looking out there where they always say be careful what you get famous for. You always wonder he had to hate his whole audience. You know what I mean? Fucking dirtbags.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he was that staunch a Republican back then or not.
Right,
who knows what? I mean, obviously he's a big hunter and NRA and all that nonsense, but. Yeah, it's weird. Definitely, it's funny because I have friends that that are really good friends of mine that are really into the whole NRA thing and other stuff that I'm not. I'm definitely on the opposite side of that. A lot of that stuff. So it's interesting though to have their perspective of it because everybody's got their thing. And
I get it.
Some people lean one way about one thing and another about another thing.
Right.
But
Chris Rock style, Republican on some stuff, Democratic on another.
I think both sides have some element of decency to it. Unfortunately, you can't put them all together and make it all good. But it's rare that I have too many crazy arguments about politics. We try to keep politics, it's especially metal. It's all fun, and we're in it for that sort of thing. And politics and religion, the two things that screw all that sort of stuff up. But.
Unless it's satanic. satanic religion, then it makes a great record.
Yes, well, yeah, makes an interesting record.
Number of the Beast, all the Slayer records, Merciful Fate. Without Satan, like I always say, Satan should win a Grammy. You know what I mean? For fucking, you know.
Certainly spawned a lot of great music. Yeah, horror movies too. It's all kind of the same thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, man.
But the funny thing about that is, I mean, not to out people, but I'll out. 99.9% of the people that write all that crazy satanic lyrics are not Satanists. They're
not at all.
It's fantasy lyrics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
There's a few that are pretty serious about it, though.
Yeah. Are there some serious, besides that black metal stuff where they're burning the churches?
Well, yeah, that's too out of control.
Crazy.
Look, King Diamond. I mean, he's everywhere talking about this sort of stuff. And
is he really into that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, he's an interesting. I mean, he's not going to advocate, burning churches or any of that stuff. But he's into the I don't know what there's some sort of name for this whole thing, but it's basically do what you do what you're supposed to do good unto others, and all these things you're supposed to do. But he definitely is into that sort of like I said, I forget what it's actually called. There's some name for that type of thing, and certainly Nurgle from Behemoth has been pretty outspoken about his views, and I think his are more anti-Christianity and the kind of the foils and things that he thinks come up short in Christianity. I think you see that in Europe a lot of times with people that are opposed to the Catholic Church and that sort of stuff. They get pretty outspoken, which gets them into trouble a lot of times.
Yeah.
Got Behemoth thrown out of Russia.
Wow, man, Russia of all places.
I know. Well, there's some conservative parts of Russia apparently.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about like Satan sells in metal. That's just all there is to it. Anything that seemed kind of fucking crazy. I mean, you and I were talking about Number of the Beast, all-time best. There is that black church in San Fran.
Yeah.
That, and it's funny when people pitch Satanism to you, they're always like, well, actually, it's like love and everything. It's not this. It's you're like, oh, I don't know. We've gotten the wrong end, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. There's all sorts of religions and people believe all sorts of crazy stuff. So who knows?
Let's talk those Slayer records. They still sell every day or what?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Slayer's still out there doing their thing. So
what format's good for you? Digital, or you were saying streaming? But
streaming is the new. That's where most of the money's coming in now. I mean, it's starting to be real money, and we weren't really sure. Metal so long has been a physical. CDs and albums have been our thing, and up until even last year, probably 80% of all our worldwide sales were physical. And we knew that was going to start to erode because you just see, record stores going out of business and, all this sort of stuff. And a little bit concerned about how the streaming was going to kind of come in and prop it up if it even was. And it's doing it more than we thought it was. And the interesting thing about streaming is it's 63% of all stuff that's streamed is catalog.
Right.
So we have a huge catalog, so that's potentially why some of that stuff's doing well. So, but I mean, Slayer, vinyl does well, CDs do well, and certainly the streaming stuff is starting to get out of control.
Was that stuff remastered from the original tapes, the Slayer vinyl? Because, there's that scam where record companies just, Warner Brothers really fucked Metallica, man, because I know how Metallica is really intricate on everything they do, but right when they left Warner Brothers, right before they did, they put those vinyls out, and they're some of the worst sounding things ever. They just cut them off the
got to be careful about that because, you can just remaster it doesn't mean anything. Nope. You have to do it the right way. So we try to not overly do that stuff. I think we remastered the Slayer stuff once the kind of technology got a little bit better. But it doesn't sound a whole lot different from the way it was. I think that's the key is make it sound better, more up to date, but don't take away the kind of soul of how it sounds.
Now, Eddie loves CDs. I got rid of all my CDs a couple of years ago because you can see the writing on the wall.
Yep.
There's no fucking CD players, and there's no in the computers anymore. And who's going to be making CD players in a couple more years? And then it's going to be strictly streaming. Don't you see that? Where are you going to get a CD player?
Well, what's funny about that, though, is I don't know that it's going to go away really fast just because there still are cars and other stuff that I've seen. It's going to take a while, maybe a generation for it to completely go away. And certain parts of the world, like Germany, I mean, that's all the Germans want are
that's
physical.
What he said, yeah.
They don't listen to streaming or digital downloads. They want physical stuff. So I do think it's getting less and less and less for sure. And it's going to go down exponentially, but country and metal are the two genres that still people want to buy something and have it, and they still have players. I mean, cassettes are making some bizarre
They did.
little comeback.
I sold all
now.
my cassettes. It was crazy. Like good, because I had all the dude. I had Don't Break the Oath on cassette. Got
I'm
like
trying to get rid of my CDs. I'm moving everything, so I was trying to, because I don't know, 10,000 CDs. So I'm going through trying to get rid of all of them, and I keep going like, I have too many of these. Half the stuff I have is all rare and collectible stuff. I was like, I don't want to get rid of that.
the stuff that I
So,
still have.
it's not
is
as easy.
All the bootlegs.
Oh, yeah, I
the,
keep
the
my
pricey
bootlegs.
ones that I bought in Japan and stuff. But I have no player, and they eventually, some are 20 years old. They all of a sudden stop playing those.
Really?
Well, they'll like bootlegs. Like,
Oh,
yeah, if
interesting.
you check that out, it'll do kind of like digital glips and stuff. Like,
Oh, wow.
there's particles missing from the format.
I digitized all my bootlegs because I have a lot. I was a big bootleg collector,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I digitized all my cassettes and CD bootlegs. But I still have it. I can't bear to get rid of it all yet. I was really in the mood, like, okay, this is it. I'm going to get rid of all this
Yeah.
stuff, and then I went through and I'm realizing I'm doing a terrible job of that. I think I'm keeping 70% of my CDs.
Oh my God! You got a CD player?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I don't have one, and I'm my rule
I kept
is
some of the old ones.
when I'm at home, I go vinyl only, and then when I'm on the road, it's straight streaming on my phone.
But I don't even listen to these CDs anymore. It's just a matter of it's a
Right.
cool old collectible, so I can't like the generic, whatever the
Oh, yeah.
the
See-
regular printing of Metallica's whatever
yeah,
Black Album. I'll get rid of that. But then I have 500 singles and special editions and all this sort of stuff, and that stuff I can't. I think part of me is like, I don't want to get rid of it because I'm a collector, which is a terrible thing to be, first
I
of all. And
know.
second of all, I was like, I don't want to sell it to, Amoeba or something. They're going to buy it for 50 cents and probably sell it for $15.
I'll tell you how you do it. What you do is you look up a couple places on the road, like I did when you're out on the road. Let's say you're going to Texas, like to see King Diamond or something, and you bring you look it up and you see used CD stores that aren't in the major cities, like San Fran, LA, New York, where they're going, here's 50 cents each one. And these places are like we were just talking, how there's still VHS rental places. Well, there's places that fucking sell the shit out of these used CDs.
Oh, yeah.
So I took mine down to San Diego to a small indie shop. He bought 1,000 of them from me on the spot. I had to wait a day while he counted them all, and I did shows and went the next day.
I just need to hire somebody to do an eBay store, because we've done that at Metal Blade. Like, we see collectible stuff that we've done in the past that is going for like $100, $200 on eBay. It's crazy, like long boxes and other crazy collectible stuff on there. So I don't know, I'll do a pop-up store somewhere or something.
That'd be fucking huge. You know what I mean? What do you think? I know it's hard to break it down, but what do you think the greatest couple metal shows you ever saw?
Yeah, that's always hard to do. I think one of them would definitely be, I saw 6 of the 8 shows that Iron Maiden recorded for the World Slavery album, the live After Death.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were at Hammersmith Odeon in London, and one of them, we were in Music for Nations, which is the big UK label back in the day.
My
And
Metallica's on that.
Yeah, everybody was on there. So they somehow got me 8th row tickets, and Hammersmith was it was like a 2,000 seat venue. It was a really small venue, even though I always thought it was like a massive arena or something. You get there, it's like, oh my God, it's a small venue. So you get 8th row center tickets, and there's a little bit of a gap between the row in front of me and me. So literally, Iron Maiden is 15 feet away from you on stage, and you could almost reach out and shake hands with Bruce. It was so close. So that show was unbelievably amazing. That's definitely in my top 3 or 4. And then it gets kind of tough after that. There's so many shows I saw. I'll give you 2 other ones only because they were 2 of my favorite bands, and the only time I got to see them with the original singers. So AC/DC,
of course,
Bomb Beach Arena, the Highway to Hell tour with Bomb.
Oh yeah,
that was amazing. That might be the loudest show I ever saw.
Wow,
because I was a bootlegger back then, so I was recording all the shows, and my tape recorder broke after 20 minutes. It was so loud.
Wow, really?
Excuse me. And then I saw Thin Lizzy twice, also at Long Beach Arena, open for Journey on the Black Rose record. And Thin Lizzy, one of my all-time favorite bands. So
yeah. Oh, that's your all-time favorite?
All one of my. Maiden's number 1.
Right.
And then from there, it gets a little murky. Thin Lizzy, Rainbow, there's a bunch of stuff. But seeing them, at least I got to see them twice with Phil, and they were phenomenal. So those shows are real special, just because that's the only time I got to see them with these guys.
Thin Lizzy is such an interesting band because It absolutely makes me furious. Out of all the bands, I think on the radio, they get locked down to the only 3 songs over and over and over. It makes me fucking crazy to hear, Boys Are Back in Town, Jailbreak, and what would be the third they play?
I don't even know they play 3. I mean,
yeah,
they play
it's 2, really.
Don't Believe a Word. I mean, there's a million songs that they did.
Right.
And like in Europe, it's all over the place.
Right, but it's crazy, right? Every time, like Thin Lizzy coming up, it's like the Boys Are Back in Town.
I know.
They're so deep with amazing tracks and have so much depth, Well,
that's the thing is they probably one of the most influential bands of all time for metal artists, because you cannot ask anybody that's over the age of 30 and they won't put Thin Lizzy in their top bands.
Right.
Guys in bands. I mean, they're so amazing. Such a legendary, amazing band.
And also different lineups and still killing it. You know what I mean? Like, different lineups of guitar players, and it's like each era is different and cool. Like, I love the Renegade record.
Oh, dude, that was their heaviest stuff. Renegade and Angel of Death and all that stuff. Those 2 records that John Sykes was on, who ended up obviously going to Whitesnake and Def Leppard and everything, are amazing. And those are the 2, like, they're the early 80s, let's be more heavy sort of records.
Yeah,
they're
Thunder and Lightning.
Thunder and Lightning and Renegade, amazing. And we had the honor of reissuing those records when we were Warner Brothers in the 90s, too, which was cool because we remastered everything. And
oh, wow.
We made a real nice package and
on
stuff.
vinyl?
Oh, we did everything. Well, no, we did CD at that point. That was when vinyl was done.
Yeah.
And CDs were all the rage, and they weren't reissued on CD, so we redid all the CDs. We did 5 Thin Lizzy records back then.
Wow, man! And did you get to see the masters? Were they there? Or?
We had the masters. In fact, I almost had a heart attack. Again, talk about this in the book. For the Sake of Heaviness, by the way.
Yeah. Look, by the way, he's promoting a book, and you got to get it for real. For the Sake of Heaviness, 35 years, Metal Blade, and it's out yesterday. Came out yesterday.
So anyway, we had the original master tapes of Black Rose, and I'm in the mastering studio. We did all our mastering. This guy, Eddie Schreier, who was at Capitol and was an amazing mastering guy. So we're in the studio, and the tape starts falling apart.
Oh, because they didn't bake it?
So I am freaking out. Like, I have the original master tape. If this breaks or something, somebody's going to kill me at Warner Brothers. And he's like, don't worry about it. We'll bake it. It'll be fine. So they put it in, baked it. Everything was
God.
fine. I was having an absolute heart attack at that point, going, ah!
Yeah.
He's like, and Eddie was like, don't worry about it. We'll just bake it. It'll be fine.
I had the Vault Master on the show who's in control of all of Zappa's tapes. And
nice.
Fucking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And his full-time job every day is preserving these, bouncing them onto new tape, baking these, everything. It's like incredible, that whole thing.
Yeah, we've stored all our stuff in Hollywood, actually right next to George Lucas's vault in Hollywood with all of our old master tapes. And they have to be stored at a specific temperature. And, that place has been there forever, because even old films and stuff will fall apart if you don't.
Of course.
It's almost like wine. You got to keep it at a certain temperature.
The celluloid just crumbles.
Yeah. So luckily all of our stuff is still pretty good. Every once in a while we'll get something out of there and have to bake it. But if you keep it, stuff will last a long time if you keep it in the right environment, I guess.
Yeah. Were you doing a lot of drugs back then? Because your memory seems to be pretty spot on. No drugs?
I was not a drug guy. I never liked pot. I tried a couple times, in the immortal words of Lemmy, said I hate it because it makes me mellow. And I would literally just, if I smoked some pot, I would just lie down in the corner. I never did any hallucinogens or any of that stuff. I think I did mushrooms once.
Any speed or coke? No
speed. There was a little time frame of a really good friend of mine was Stevie Nicks. I'm going to get her in trouble. Coke dealer.
No.
So he would just flip us some. But I was like, you would give me a half a gram of Coke, and it would last me like 3 weeks. Because I would maybe do a little bit every couple days, and that was the extent of it. So I never really got into that. And then one night, after partying all night long with a band that shall remain nameless, I woke up the next day, my heart's doing 1,000 miles an hour. I'm like, this is probably not such a good idea. So I had my little dalliance for about a year or so in the 80s when everybody's doing it. I was like, I think not.
I have now you're writing this book. When you're going to the stories of the book, I have a hard time. Everything's, to me, I'm like, okay, Priest, Solar Angels, Point Entry Tour, definitely remember perfectly. Okay, also the Screaming for Vengeance and the Defenders. And then I'll look at Stubbs and go, fuck, I saw these guys like 9 times. You know what I mean? It's all a blur after you see the epic first time of these bands, because it's like a drug. You see them the first time, like, holy fuck, there they are. AC/DC, Powerade tour. I can't believe it. And then after a while, you're like, God, I've seen this band a bunch of times. I forgot even on that tour, different venues, like the Injustice tour. I looked it up. I saw him 5 times. I said 4, and then I looked. I go, I actually saw him 5 times on that tour.
Oh yeah, and I've seen a lot of bands hundreds of times because I've been to so many shows. So yeah, I mean, I have a pretty good memory of where I saw certain things here and there. But there's a lot of stuff where somebody will say, "Yeah, I met you at such and such a show somewhere." I was like, "Really? I was at that show? All right, well, probably makes sense."
Yeah,
can't remember all of them because there's just so. I mean, probably been at thousands of concerts at this point.
Yeah, me too, thousands. You know,
yeah,
but
easily.
I'm saying like. You know, it's like 5 times on one tour, and you're going, okay, I remember the Shoreline, Justice. Yeah. And then you go, wait a minute, Concord Pavilion, Sacramento. Oh, yeah, they played the Cow Palace on that, you know, and after a while, you're like, fuck.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of that. Because, yeah, I mean, I probably, some of those Metallica shows I'd go, or like Metallica, Maiden, you know, Kiss with the original band.
Yeah.
I'd go to 10 or 15 shows on a tour.
Yeah.
Just to keep seeing it. But, yeah.
Were you just driving around back then, going to the shows, or flying?
Well, driving or flying. I mean, I flew to, you know, if there was anything on the West Coast, I would try to do as many as possible. Go to, you know, obviously drive to San Diego, drive to up north, but you also fly to Phoenix or Vegas, or you know, obviously I'd see a lot of stuff in New York too. And sometimes I'll do a whole leg of a tour. I'll just go to, you know, like when Kiss was doing their reunion thing, because I'm a huge Kiss fan. I went
96.
I went to like I did all the Texas shows, and pretty much Texas all the way through Southern California. Or with Metallica, when they were doing multiple nights, I just go hang. Like they were in Denver on the Black Album tour, and they were doing 3 nights there. I realized, like, you come out because, you know, it's Denver, there's not much going on. We're hanging here for like 5 days. So I went out and saw them hung for them for 5 days and saw 3 shows. I remember thinking to myself, like, you know, by the 3rd show, that was probably the 10th show I'd seen on that run of days. I'm like, probably, I might get kind of bored. I might do something else or see some of the show, but they're so good.
Oh God!
I was like, screw it, I got to go every night. So
I brought my mom. I saw that tour probably 10 times, and you know, Snake Pit every time because Jason would hook it, and I brought my mom to the Snake Pit.
Nice, that's awesome.
She's in the Snake Pit, man. It's fucking crazy. I recently just interviewed the guy Tom Gaffey, who runs still to this day the Phoenix Theater, where Metallica did the warm-ups for the Black Album tour, and I went to those 2 nights. Did you ever go to the Phoenix Theater, man?
I've been there, yep.
That place is epic, man.
It's an awesome place.
What a compound of music that has gone down there, still right now.
Yeah, I haven't been there for a long time. They haven't booked anything heavy there for a while, have they?
Well, yeah, they still do metal, and now they do hip-hop, you know? But, you know, some... Megadeth there, Metallica, Faith No More.
I love the what is it? The Waldorf? What's not the
old
Waldorf? The old Waldorf up there.
Next door to the Punchline.
I saw King Diamond on the Abigail tour there, and that was the best crowd of the whole tour. I mean, that crowd.
Oh no, that's the Warfield.
The Warfield.
Yeah,
sorry.
that's a great. Yeah. That's where Slayer did that famous live record.
Yep. Yeah, that place is amazing. The crowd, it's old theater. It's a beautiful place, and the crowds there are just insane.
Yeah.
I love that place. Yeah, I remember the old Waldorf. I mean, I went to all that, you know.
Old Waldorf, yeah. That was the small
old
one.
Waldorf, the Stone, all that sort of stuff back in the day. But I do love that venue for those kind of, you know, 2,000-3,000 seat venues. The place is awesome. And the crowds there are just, that's the one thing about San Francisco is crowds always up there for metal are insane. It's always usually some of the best cities on the tours for all these metal bands, always the Bay Area.
What do you listen to other than metal? Do you listen to anything else? Like now, I'm way into the Dead. I love Springsteen. I'm out all over the board. You know, what are you into?
I mean, look, I appreciate, like, I like Springsteen or Tom Petty, or I'll go see them. But I don't really listen to anything other than metal, really.
Yeah.
Like if you look at my collection, or you know, for fun, I'll have I have an iPod that's got like 3,600 of my favorite songs on it. It's mostly 70s and 80s rock and metal. So I think the only one band that I kind of am really super into that's not really a quote-unquote metal band is this band from the UK called the Manic Street Preachers.
Oh, I know him, yep.
Yeah, they put a bunch of records out like in the '90s that I just think they're amazing. Absolutely worship them. So, but other than that, it's pretty much metal or the Thin Lizzies or all that kind of '70s heavy rock and things like City Boy,
UFO.
Yeah, of course, UFO, all that stuff. I mean, that's the roots of my stuff. So that's what I'll listen to mostly. But yeah, I don't go outside of metal too much. Like I said, I'll go to shows or if something's playing, I'll respect it and like it. But I'm not gonna put on Born to Run when I go home and listen to it.
Yeah. I just enjoy the juxtapose of it, because I'll go like Born to Run and then I'll go Number of the Beast.
Yep.
Like, all right, I'm getting ready to go out and do some comedy. Let's get some Number of the Beast on here. Start walking up fucking Second Avenue,
Yeah, sadly, my repartee is just metal.
How did you? First of all, you wrote the book. How long did it take you? And was it way longer at first?
No, not really. It took about a year and a half to go through the whole thing. I wrote this guy Mark Eglinton who did Rex Brown from Pantera's book and Nurgle from Behemoth. He's written a bunch of stuff and. It took a long time, but I felt the one thing I felt about the book is I didn't want it to be too long.
Right.
It's a pretty short book. It's like a 4 or 5 hour read. It's a couple hundred pages. So I felt like it's a record label book. It's not super exciting.
Right.
It's not like some band with debauchery stories and all this sort of stuff. I didn't want to put any of that stuff in there anyway. I just wanted to really kind of be about the history of the label and also kind of the history of hand in hand with the history of metal as well. So,
right. Absolutely.
So it took a while. Then about a year and a half of writing it, and then 6 months or so of making sure it's all sorted out and reading it over and over again and making sure everything's right, or I didn't forget something. I had some other people that, especially the label reading, go, "Oh, you forgot about this." I go, "Oh shoot, that's right, I forgot about that." So,
last question. Metallica's putting out Masters. They're going to put out eventually Injustice for All. Everybody's hitting me like, are they finally going to have bass? I think it's a masterpiece exactly how it is.
Agreed.
It would be a travesty if they put bass on that also. I could see one original and then one with bass.
That's the only way you can do it, because we get into this doing reissues on our side as well. Is when you want something to sound better than it did. Man, I'll tell you, the fans revolt about, or even remixing something. Fans revolt no matter how not great a mix is or a mastering is. They want the original stuff. So I'm with you. I think if they're going to do that, and that's a good question. I'll have to ask Lars about that.
Yeah.
I think, do the original one, soup it up a little bit. And then if you want to do one with a little bit more bottom end,
or maybe one song as like a DVD or a CD extra. Here's one with that bass.
The funny thing is that they did do at one point is when Saint Anger came out with that crazy drum sound.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was in the studio a lot for that record, and when Lars was playing the drum, they played me some of the stuff early on. I was like, "What's going on with that snare sound, man?"
Yeah.
It's like, no, we were like, because they were obsessed with System of a Down at that point, so that's why it kind of sounds that way. But they were all, even Bob Rock is like, it's not going to sound that way on the record. And then I get the record, I go, it still pretty much sound that way. But when they put out some kind of monster single or EP, because it had a bunch of live stuff in it, they changed the snare tone to a normal snare tone, and it sounds way better.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only guy, and I recorded all my life, and I played music, and I've never ever once questioned the sound of a record. Like, I never go, God, this sounds. To me, the first thing I listen to is the songs, and then the performance, like the attitude of it. I never once went, God, this Justice has no bass. Not once did I think that, and also Saint Anger with the snare. I was like so into that record. Me and Florentine love it. We're like, this thing's fucking great.
I do like that. I do like that record, but it does sound weird. I mean, look, it's my business and job to make sure things sound decent. So I definitely noted that stuff. But when you really think about Metallica, it's pretty funny. They're arguably one of the biggest band in the world, sort of the biggest metal band ever. And when you look at their history of recordings, like you have Injustice for All with no bass.
Yeah.
You have Saint Anger with a weird drum sound, and then you have Death Magnetic with all the distorted master.
Yeah.
It's like 3 of their 9 records kind of have a really weird sound.
Crazy audio.
Yeah. But like you said, the thing is, no one really cares because the attitude, the songs, everything else about it is awesome, and most people are just like, whatever,
I never even thought about it. I'll tell you what I do think about before you split is, I still think that Lars I love Lars, and he got the beating over that Napster stuff. And it's strange that no one ever says, "Hey, man, you were right."
You know, what's funny about that is there was an article in. This is several years ago when the business was like really looking bleak because of all that stuff. And somebody got credit for, I forget who it was, like Katy Perry or somebody kind of stood up against the piracy sort of stuff. And everybody's like lauding all this credit on, like, oh, it's how great it is that you're standing up for the artist and yada, yada, yada. And meanwhile, I'm thinking like, poor Lars, man, when he said it, he got destroyed by everybody.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him at one point, you know, I don't know how many long, after when the business was kind of a mess. And we were talking about that whole thing as like you I mean, honestly, you were right. Like, you know, you're right. Proven to be right about that stuff. But yeah, everybody's to this day still kind of hates it. It's really a bummer because he's like literally the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, and, you know, he gets fucking massive bullshit for no reason. For really no reason. He was never like, you know, like I know a lot of rock stars that people go like, I don't like that guy because he's a rock star. But he's the first guy to stop, take photos, sign stuff, talk about the band. He's a full-blown metal fan. He never abandoned metal. He made shitloads of money and stuff. And then all of a sudden people are like, that guy's a dick. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about here. Because that guy started from the ground up, didn't know how to play an instrument.
I think the problem, I mean, it's really easy to go back and figure out the problem is. So he was the first kind of high profile, you know, big time musician that came out against this stuff. And at that point, the vibe was, and really one of the reasons I think that the file sharing thing became such a huge issue was that the record companies were just fucking over the fans. I mean, they're putting out crap music for super expensive, and it was just garbage. You'd pay $20 for an album, and there'd be one good song on there, and you're screwed. So when you can get it for free, it's like, yeah, fuck the record companies. They're, you know, I get it. I totally get it. I see why they would do that. So it was really about the hey, we're the hardworking poor people that love music, and we're getting screwed over by the big people. And I think Lars got swept into, he's going to be the poster child for the big rich people that don't want us to get our music how we want to get our music. So I get that. But when you kind of see what happened to the business, and look, rightly so, I mean, the business needed to get weeded out because there was too much nonsense going on there.
I think people only hear what they want to hear too. What the grand thing is, here's the point. I already got my money, dude. This is for the other bands.
Well, that's what he's trying to. That's really what he was really talking about. And I think eventually, look, in our little world, you know, we had all of the artists go, you know, especially with advent of social media and stuff, we go out there and say, like, look, guys, you know, we understand what you're trying to do, but this is our livelihood, and if you don't support us, we can't do this. Like, we're not millionaires. We're doing this, you know, paycheck to paycheck, or in a lot of cases, working jobs to be able to do this. So you're taking money directly from us that ceases to help make us do this. And I mean, to the credit, especially in the metal community, they all rallied around that. I remember for a while, it was like this big badge of honor. They're like, I buy CDs, I buy music, and that was really great. So, but yeah, it's still kind of funny that it's much less now than it was before. Obviously,
but it really bled over into all the entertainment. It's like, you know, this show has you know, over 3 million downloads and thousands of downloads a week. And if you asked each person for $1, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, $1. Oh, fucking dude, you're like $1. You know what I mean? It's like it's washed over into where everybody expects everything for free. You know what I'm saying? Which is really bizarre.
Well, I think I get it, but I do think what we see, because I mean the same thing. I mean, we have, you know, I don't know, 1 million Facebook followers, and I mean we have, like, between all the social medias, we've already got 2 million different people that follow us and all this stuff, and you know, you struggle to sell, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 albums of something.
Exactly.
So like, what is that? You know, 0.05%. But I do think, though, now that if you put out something quality, especially I'm talking in terms of music at this point. If you put out something really good, and this has really been, I think, helpful to the overall scene, not just metal but music scene, is like you have to put something out good now, because if you don't, there's no incentive for people to buy it. So that actually has brought up and ramped up and made music a lot better. So I think that, you know, while that whole file sharing thing was difficult, I think there were offshoots of it that actually helped everything. And now the business is kind of getting back to being decent again. So it's all, you know, everything happens for a reason. And all kind of where we're at now, especially with how much good music is out there, we might not have gotten to if that whole thing didn't happen. So
Yeah. There is tons of great music out there, man. And when somebody says there's no good music anymore, I don't even give them 2 minutes of my time, because music to them is just a time machine back to when they were single and with no bills and stuff. That's just a memory to them compared to you or I or Eddie Trunk or people that listen to the show, where it's a way of life. You know?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Thanks for doing the show, dude. The book's out, and is it on iTunes or
the book's everywhere? Yeah, it's
Amazon?
on iTunes, Kindle, Amazon.
You got an audio version?
Noble. Not an audio version yet. So the book people, it's the first time I've done a book. So the book people told me, because that was one of my first questions, like, what about the audio version?
Yeah.
So
for us metalheads, and
exactly.
Like, reading.
So what they
sucks.
they tell you, what the book people told me was that we do that about 6 months after the book comes out. It's kind of a secondary release and stuff.
Yeah.
So there will be an audio book, and
I'll do the audio for you.
All right. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not doing all of it. I'm going to do my parts of it, and then I'm going to have John Bush from the Legendary Armored Saint, who one of his jobs is to do voiceover work.
Oh, yeah.
Do all the other stuff. So,
Yeah.
So at least his part at least sound professional.
Is he out doing the Anthrax record that he recorded? Playing that live now? I was reading something.
Not that I know of.
Oh wow! I thought somebody told me, or I read it somewhere, that he was going to go out and do that record.
No, I mean, there's always been discussions of that, and I know Scott Ian would love that to happen, but I'm not so sure that it'd be cool to see. But Anthrax is doing so great now with Joey B
I'm
back in
saying
the
John
band.
Bush on his own.
Oh no, no way he's doing that. There's no way he's doing that. That's definitely not
I
happening.
couldn't remember. I read that, or somebody said they were doing that, or something.
That's definitely not happening. That I can guarantee you is not happening.
That's a great record. Sound of the White Noise.
It is a great record. It's one of the biggest Anthrax records ever, actually.
Yeah.
Crazy enough.
But to me, it is Joey Belladonna. To me, I love,
I mean, look, John's one of my favorite singers of all time, and he was great in Anthrax. But I mean, Anthrax is Joey.
Yeah.
Even John admits that. He knows that.
Yeah. I don't think Scott admits it, but I love him, man. He's a great dude. He's crazy, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing the show.
Thanks so much, man.
And then you got the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the book is out. Get the book, everybody, and I'm looking forward to reading it, man. I can't wait.
Cool. Awesome.
And congrats on 35 fucking years, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got any new records coming out? You got the new Guar coming out. You said it's good. I watched the video.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I think this new Guar record I love. I think it's one of the best ones they've done in a long time, even without the late, great Dave Brocky. But yeah, that's coming out in September. Then October we have a Black Dahlia Murder. In November, Cannibal Corpse. And early next year, a King Diamond double live CD, DVD of the last tour. So a lot of good stuff coming up.
That last tour was incredible.
Oh, so good.
With the Castle. Come on, man. Thanks for the tickets, too.
Yeah, no worries,
so
man.
fucking epic, man. Oh, speaking of traffic, too, King Diamond was like an hour late that night because of fucking traffic in L.A. He decided to go back to the hotel, and then we sat there like, when the fuck is he going on? God damn, that's brutal.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. And make sure you go back and check out the other episode with Brian, because it's the whole history of Metal Blade, which is very interesting. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe and leave a review right now on iTunes. Candles lit.